Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about the nervous system. So the nervous system is one of the most important system of organs in our body, and its primary include uh, CNS and PNS. So the CNS is a central nervous system including brain and spinal cord. So the brain and spinal cord um, it's not a one structure, but they physically connect, right? So brain and spinal cord they physically connect, even though it's a separate structures. Then we have peripheral nervous system. They include cranial nerves, 12 pair of cranial nerves, which is originate in our brain, and then we have spinal nerves, which is originate from the spinal cord. So what's the difference between CNS and PNS? So the CNS, central nervous system, is where all the decision made up, right? This is the center of our uh, all nervous system. The peripheral nervous system are the tracks where those decisions are going to, right? So we have and the decision have been made in the nervous system, and it's electrical signal, and this electrical signal have to travel for the nerves, and so they gather information from sensors and conduct decision to effectors. So if you feel a heat or a touch on your skin, that information is gonna travel by nerves to your central nervous system. This decision and it's gonna travel by peripheral nervous system through the peripheral nervous system. There's a signal of temperature. For example, it's gonna be cold or hot. The temperature is the signal is going to be interpreted in your central nervous system, and then back decision is going to conduct by the other tracks of a peripheral nervous system, and then you're going to decide, is it hot, is it too cold, do you have to let your arm away from the heat source or cold source. So this is how it looks like. So by blue we have our CNS, and by yellow we have PNS. So one more time, CNS include brain and spinal cord. As we can see, those structures they physically communicate. Right here we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves, which is originate in a brain, and then we have spinal cord and spinal nerves originate from the spinal cord. You don't have to know the name of nerves. This is going to be a problem if you're going to go to medical school, if you're going to be a nurse or PA. So then you have to know the names of all those structures. So let me break up the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system is it's the place where decisions are made and decision made, and the peripheral nervous system are roads and tracks where those decisions are traveled to the nervous system and out the nervous system. So we have a somatic sensory fibers, which is from our skin and special sense, like our olfactory sense of smell, sense of hearing, our vision, temperature, and then you have a visceral sensory fibers from internal organs. This is, for example, is going to be sensation. This is going to be example from your stomach, from your liver, from your kidneys. Those information from visceral sensory is going to go to the brain. They're going to be analyzed, and if a decision have been taken, is divided by two types of somatic motor fibers and autonomic motor fibers. So somatic motor fibers divide by it's only go to the skeletal muscles. So basically, it's a voluntary movements you can do by your muscle. So you can definitely control this. So if you want to move your head, move your arms, basically use your skeletal muscles. Those somatic motor fibers used, and then you have autonomic motor fibers. This is involuntary movements, involuntary decisions. So you cannot control this, and it's divided by sympathetic diffusion and parasympathetic diffusion. And we're going to be talking about this more in the end of the lecture. So neurons. So we have when we were talking about the neurous tissue, we were talking about the neurons and glia cells. So the glia cells is all supporting cells which help to survive, help to maintain the healthy state of neurons. And the neurons are divided by three groups. It's a motor neurons, sensory neurons, and interneurons. So as I mentioned before, so the motor neurons accept nerve impulse from the CNS and transmit them to the muscles or glands. So this is going to be example, motor neurons, this is going to be example of somatic motor fibers. Somatic motor fibers or autonomic motor fibers. So this is example of motor neurons. And then you have a sensory neurons. This is accept impulse from a sensory receptors and transmit them to the CNS. So this is going to be example of somatic sensory fibers and visceral sensory fibers. And then you have interneurons. So this is the interneurons making up the majority of the neurons in our whole nervous system. They make up probably 95 to 99% of all the neurons we have. And so the interneurons convey nerve impulse from the sensory neurons and send information to motor neurons. So basically all the interneurons are located in our brain in spinal cord. So the interneurons are responsible for making decisions. So if you have so they have to interpretate those decisions, and they receive interneurons receive information from a sensory neurons. Then decision is going to be taken in the interneurons, and then they're going to send the signal to the motor neurons, and then the motor neurons is going to send the signal and transmit them to the muscle or glands. But you should remember that interneurons are mostly located they located on the brain and a spinal cord, and they make up the majority of a nervous tissue. So this is example of a motor neurons, sensory neurons, and interneuron. So the difference between motor neuron and sensory neuron is the motor neurons originate the cell body of motor neurons originate in the CNS, and then the fiber and then the fiber of motor neurons is considered to be PNS. So the cell bodies originate mostly in the nervous system, and then it's gonna receive a decision and a signal from a CNS, from our brain and spinal cord, and it's gonna send a signal, appropriate signal, to our muscles and glands. This is an example of our muscles. And then when the signal is going to be received, the muscles, they are going to be contracted. And then we have a sensory neuron. So the structure of a sensory neuron is a little bit different. So we have an axon, and an axon is kind of divided by cell body. So in the motor neuron, we have only just one axon which is going out from a cell body, but in sensory neuron, the cell body divide axon, and those so sensory neuron physically do not locate on a CNS, so that this is a truly peripheral nervous neuron. It do not lay, so it receives information by axons. It receives information from your skin, from your joints, from your visceral organs, and it's gonna send the signal to the cell body. The cell body is gonna transmit that signal back to the axon, and this axon is gonna go to the CNS, and those axon is gonna interact with interneuron. Then interneuron is gonna analyze this decision, and interneuron is interacting with axon, with the cell body of axon is gonna send the signal to the muscle or glands. So the structure of neurons, so you have to remember the neurons do not contain cell bodies except for the cell body of a sensory neuron, but they located, so the cell body of a sensory neuron located at very close proximity of the spinal cord. So the longest portion of an axon in a cell body is this portion between the skin in a cell body itself. So those axons make up the fibers, and those portion of axons make up a fiber. So this portion does not make up fibers as we think of. So so those nerve fibers. So the nerve include bundle of nerve fibers. So, and the structure is also very similar as a structure of muscle. So we have a separate nerve, and these nerve are gonna include bundle of nerve muscles, and they're gonna include motor neurons and sensory neurons and different type of nerve fibers. And each single axon, each single axon or single nerve fiber is going to be going to have a myelin sheath, and the myelin sheath is going to improve the signal propagation to increase the speed, right? Because the signal from your brain has to go to your toys at really fast speed. So those myelin sheaths is going to help to propagate that electrical signal from your brain to the toys, or from your toys to the brain. So let's talk about the central nervous system, and it's include our brain and spinal cord. So the brain we can divide by 4 major structures. This is cerebellum, diencephalon, cerebellum, and a brainstem, which is include midbrain, pons, and medulla. So this is 4 structures. Those 4 names you have to remember for the quiz and for the final exam. This is cerebrum, diencephalon, cerebellum, and brainstem. So please remember those 4 structures, and please be able to find those structures on a brain, on a picture of a brain. So let me show this. So cerebrum include this portion of a brain. So this is the biggest portion of a brain, and one of the most important structure of a brain, which is all the decisions and thinking and memory forming taken up. Then we have so cerebellum include two cerebral hemispheres, left and right, which are connected by corpus callosum. This is the structure. And under the corpus callosum, we have this diencephalon, which include the thalamus. This is the thalamus. Then we have a hypothalamus and pituitary gland. So we're gonna talk about those. We're gonna talk about those structures later in the slides. Then we have a brainstem. So the brainstem this is really spinal cord. So as I said before, the brainstem. So the spinal cord and the brain physically interact. So this is the end of a spinal cord, and this is the beginning of our brain. And this portion is a transition between a cerebellum and a spinal cord. Also one of the other very important structure of our brain is a cerebellum. It's responsible for our movement mostly. We're gonna talk about this more. So let me talk about the cerebrum. One of the main important one of the most important structures of a brain. This is a cerebral cortex, and the cerebral cortex is a thin but high convolute outer layer of gray matter. So the gray matter is mostly making up by cell bodies of neurons, interneurons, and with all the decisions taken up. So, and we have four lobes of our cerebral cortex. This is a frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. And those four different lobes where all this thinking, plan making, sensation, thinking, everything is taken up on this very thin layer of our brain. So this is a very thin layer of a gray matter, and we also have a white matter. So what's the difference between the gray matter and white matter? The gray matter is making up by cell bodies of neurons, and the white matter is making up by axons and dendrites of neurons. So the frontal lobe, so the frontal lobe include premotor area, motor speech, and prefrontal area. So one of the most important structure of a frontal lobe is a prefrontal area. This is where humans are really outperforming most of the animals, and this is area where all the deep thinking and decision planning making occurs. And this area of a cerebral cortex is matured by age of 25 years old. So this is and if the person is under 25 years old or approximately 25, this prefrontal cortex is not mature yet, and that person is not able to take life decisions. So basically, when you're gonna be at 25 years old or like 26, it can be concluded you can take a very mature decisions. So before those before this time, this cortex is not formed properly. So you obviously you cannot plan those decisions, but it's not going to be as good as you're going to be, or you can take, obviously you can take very important decisions, but those decisions but if you will be 25 and more, those you will take you will decide more mature decisions if you at younger age. The frontal lobe divided by parietal lobe by central sulcus, and this and it's making the region which is important for primary motor area, which is include this, and primary somatosensory area. So this region is going to be responsible the way you move, how you're going to move your arms, your legs, and so the way, so as I say, it's primary motor area. So the way your body is moved, and sorry, and then you have in the parietal lobe, you have a very important structure which is primary somatosensory area, which is going to perceive, which is going to receive all the sensory information, from your body, and those sensory information is going to be analyzed in your cerebral cortex in this area. And as you can see, those areas divide by our specific structures of our body. So this area is responsible for feeling on the leg. This area is responsible for all the feeling on the tongues. So then you have an occipital lobe, and one of the most important function of occipital lobe is a visual area. So we have a visual area in a occipital lobe, and this portion is responsible for interpreting the visual you perceive, the information you receive from your eyes, and this area is responsible to interpret your picture. And then you have a visual association area. This is how you can, if you see the picture, or if you see different objects, those areas gonna analyze those objects and what they mean. So then temporal lobe mostly responsible for receiving information and interpreting the information of your hearing. So this is auditory association area. Then you have sensory speech. So this area is responsible for language. Those people who knows more than a few languages, those areas is extremely developed. And but those frontal lobes are all interconnected. So we cannot just say those, for example, occipital lobe do not connect it to parietal lobe or frontal lobe. All those lobes are interconnected, and they are taking decisions. And so when you're taking a decision and interpretate, you're not just our brain do not use only one portion of a lobe. It's using all the neurons working 24/7. Even when you sleep, you think like you think you sleep, but at that time your brain is working at the same level as you awake. So that's why we see in dreams, and sometimes those dreams can be seen very natural. So it's very difficult to tell and see and differentiate them apart, which is dream, which is real. So those are the reason why the brain working 24/7, and for that reason the brain has to consume very huge amount of energy. So the brain consumes 40% of all your energy you make per day. So if you're just gonna lay down on your bed and do nothing and just watch TV, your brain alone is gonna consume 40% of all your energy. The reason why, because all those cells, we have so many cells in our brain, and all of them are required to use glucose. So everything is very connected and interconnected in our brain. So let me talk more about the sensory regions of our brain. And as you can see, so the size, so the sensory region, they distribute unequally in our cerebral cortex. So this is, as I said, this is a thin layer of a gray matter, and then you have a white matter. So the gray matter makes up the cell body, and the white matter make up the axons and dendrites. So the reason why the lips, so the portion of your brain, which is, for example, represents your tongue and your lips, is much bigger, for example, than represents the sensory information of your hip. The reason why, and it's only one reason, because you have so much more sensory receptors on your lips. So your lips is way more sensitive. Your skin, let's put it this way, your skin on your face and generally is more sensitive than on your skin on your hips. The same way in your hand. So for example, the thumb represents very big portion of your brain. The reason why, because we not only use our brain or our hands a lot, but because we have so much many different receptors in our hands than, for example, in our neck or on our foot. If you're gonna compare the toys, and the fingers, they represent extremely different portion of our brain. So our portion have a very tiny. We have a very tiny of our cortex, which is going to interpret the information from our toys. And if you're going to compare how much of a brain is just to use our fingers and our hand, you cannot compare those. So this is the reason why, because we can make we can control precisely our fingers, and we cannot control and feel the same, and we cannot control at the same level our toys as we can control movement of our fingers. So this is why that we have a different representation of different organs and different portion of our bodies. For example, as a toy, as a tongue, represent a big portion because it has very different receptors. It's receptors for sweet, bitter, and so on. All right. So let's continue. So then the next portion of our brain, this is going to be diencephalon. This is that portion of our brain. So one of the most important function of diencephalon is to control the information which is go to the brain, and control the homeostasis. So the homeostasis is controlled by hypothalamus and pituitary gland. So those two portions, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, they the main function is to control what kind of hormones and how many hormones is going to be produced in the body, and the hormones are controlling the homeostasis of our brain or of our body. Is to control it's going to control the temperature of our body, it's going to control digestins, it's going to control all the function in our body. And then you have a big portion of our brain, it's a thalamus. And the thalamus is, we can describe as a gate of our brain. So we have a spinal cord, then we have a brainstem, and the information is going to go to our brain for the thalamus. And the thalamus is going to decide which information has to be analyzed by our cortex and which information is not going to be analyzed. But thalamus is 24/7 is aware of what happens with you all the time. And it's so let me give you an example what kind of function the thalamus does. So as you we have been wearing the clothes from our as we were young, and as we know, our body have very many different receptors, and as you sitting right now, none of you can physically feel your clothes before I said so, right? Before I start to talk about you cannot feel your clothes, you're not aware your clothes is touching your skin. So if for that reason, you can concentrate on the other things, right? So if you can feel your clothes 24/7, all the time when you sleep, if you can, for example, or if you study, for example, right? You study and you have your TV on the background, and at some point you realize you do not pay attention to TV and what they're saying. But can you imagine if you can feel and hear everything? So if you and you're gonna be aware of this, right? Your receptors are feeling them, but you're not aware of them. So the thalamus is responsible to let only important feelings to your brain. And if the thalamus is not going to be able to do this, your brain is going to be just overloaded. You're going to receive so many sensory information, so many sensory inputs to your brain, and at one point you're just going to go crazy. All right. So then we have cerebellum. So this is a cerebellum. Cerebellum is one of the most important structure which is responsible for our movement. So this cerebellum is going to receive a sensory input from our eyes, ears, joints, and muscles for only one reason, is to interpret our position in a space. So we can when a cerebellum is received the information from our eyes and joints, we can navigate through the space. So we can analyze how long the distance from the object, and how should we move our muscles to get to that object or take that object. So and then it sends the signals to send the motor impulse of the brain of the brainstem to the skeletal muscle, right? So it's gonna then signals from here, and it's gonna go to the skeletal muscle. So first, a cerebellum is gonna analyze everything, like it's gonna analyze sensory input from your joints, from your ears, and from your muscles, and then it's gonna analyze and give appropriate signal to your muscles to contract them. So it's gonna help to balance and produce the smooth movements. And when you consume the alcohol, we have so when I send the signal, so the signal is originated by neurotransmitters. So this is a molecules which is help to propagate, help to so neurotransmitters are chemicals which is initiate the signal. They initiate the electrical signal. Those are the chemicals which is initiate the signal. And we have a few examples. Is going to be glutamate and GABA. So glutamate, neurotransmitter, which is gonna responsible for excitement, right? It's gonna initiate the excitement signal. And then you have a GABA, which is act as an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and they're gonna inhibit the function of some neurons. And when you drink alcohol, when you consume alcohol, you're gonna block GABA, or you're gonna block glutamate neurons, and you're gonna activate GABA neurons and the GABA receptors. So the GABA receptors are inhibitory ones, and if you're gonna block glutamate and activate GABA, the net effect, you're gonna slow down everything. So when you consume alcohol, you slow down the function of the neurons. So because you activate inhibitory neurons, and you activate inhibitory neurons, that means if you activate inhibitory neurons, it's going to be more inhibition. And also alcohol inhibit excitement receptors, and it means everything is going to go down. So that's why you cannot properly think, you cannot properly move your you cannot properly control your muscle. It's not what you cannot move them, you cannot properly control them, because neurons, which is responsible for how you control your muscles, is going to be inhibited. And the same way, all the neurons is going to be, the more you consume, the more they're going to be inhibited. That's why you cannot properly speak, you cannot properly think, and so on. So the last portion of a brain is a brainstem. It's this portion of a brain right there. It's include midbrain, it's include pons and medulla oblongata. So one of the most important portion of a brainstem is a medulla oblongata, and it's contain reflex as a vomiting, coughing, sneezing, and so on. And also it's at centers of a controlling our organs, like like our lungs, and heart. And if the person is going to receive an injury, if he has an injury, is going to receive a trauma in a occipital portion of a head, which is right here, and it's the injury is going to go to the medulla oblongata, to that portion. It might lead to death. The reason why, because medulla oblongata is responsible for all the vital function, to control all the vital function of our body. This is our heart and the breathing, and this is injury is going to occur, the person easily might die. So let's talk about the spinal cord. So this is a cartoon that represents how the way we see the sensory neurons, interneurons, and the motor neurons. And this is a example of a involuntary reflex. So what is involuntary reflex? So the reflex which is you cannot control. So for example, if you so your skin have a sensory receptors, right? And then those sensory receptors is gonna interact with the sensory neuron. Then we have a we have a cell body of a sensory neuron, which is at close proximity of a spinal cord, and it's gonna interact with a interneuron. So this interneuron is gonna analyze the information, is gonna give the signal to the motor neuron to act on that signal. So if you have a Sharpie, a pin, right, and so all this information is going to be analyzed in a spinal cord, and then information is also going to be sent to the brain. But if the action has to be taken right now, the action is not going to wait when the signal is going to go to the brain, is going to be analyzed. So the decision is going to be taken by interneurons, and is going to be sent to the muscle. So if it's going to be too hot, or it's going to be a Sharpie pin, you're just going to take your hands immediately from that source, and then the information is gonna go to your brain, and you're gonna realize this, right? So when you touch something very sharp or very hot, you're not thinking to take your hand. Like if you have a hot and you put your hand, you're not thinking, oh, should I take my hand off, or should I wait and see how hot it is? If it happened accidentally, right? So you touch something hot, and you involuntarily move your hand away. And also, so we have a portion of a gray matter in our spinal cord, and we have a white portion of a spinal cord. So as I said, the gray matter represents the cell body of motor neurons and the interneurons, and the white body represents the nerves and axons and dendrites. But mostly it represents the fibers, sensory and motor fibers, which is come along from to the brain from all the organs, from all sensory receptors. So the last portion I want to talk about this is a peripheral nervous system. As I said, the peripheral nervous system. So the peripheral nervous system, which is receive information from our brain. So we receive information as I said from a sensory neuron, so sensory receptors. Skin, special senses like hearing, vision, and so on. Then we have visceral sensory, right? We receive information from our organs. All that information is going to go to our brain and spinal cord. It's going to be analyzed. Then this information is going to be sent by two tracks. So either by somatic motor fibers or autonomic motor fibers. So somatic motor fibers is only your skeletal muscle. So basically, when you receive information, when you receive any information to your brain, all you can do voluntarily is move your muscles. You cannot control your lungs. You cannot control. I mean, you can control the rate of breathing, right? But you cannot control not to breathe. You cannot control like the faster to breathe, but this is because the way we breathe is controlled by skeletal muscle. This is but you cannot control the working of your kidney, you cannot control your liver, you cannot control the stomach or digestive intestine, right? Or you cannot control your glands, right? So all you can do basically is to think, analyze some information, move your muscles. That's all you can do. All the other vital function, all the other vital function of your body is controlled involuntarily without you, because it will be so much information to control and we wouldn't be able to do this. So we have a sympathetic division and parasympathetic division. So basically one is increase the function of some organs and the other one is decrease the function of our organs. For example, so the sympathetic division is mostly activated during the stress, and the parasympathetic division is activated during the sleep and when you just relaxing. So it's basically fight and flight regime, and this is feed and breathe regime. So for example, one is gonna speed up the function of our heart, and the other one is gonna decrease the function of their heart. So for the quiz, please, remember all the four structures and the function of also for quiz, and be able to navigate them, right? Be able to know this is a cerebrum, this is a cerebellum. So be able to identify different structures and know the main functions. Know the main function of cerebellum, know the main function of a diencephalon. Please know the difference. Please know the difference between the different types of neurons, motor neurons and sensory neurons, and their function.